police officers Thursday at the Embakasi B Campus Training School. Leila Mohammed, NTV.
We now head to Kerio Valley, where yesterday afternoon 2 young girls were killed by bandits and were laid to rest in the county of Hua. I beg your pardon, they were killed by bandits on New Year's Day and were laid to rest yesterday afternoon. And that is in the county of Elgeyo Marakwet. Roy Songwe attended the burial and filed this report.
It is a painful Wednesday afternoon at Kiptalim village in Marakwet East constituency. Here, both mother and father are overcome by grief as they bury their 2 daughters who were killed by bandits on the onset of the new year.
Tunaomba sana ile training camps ya jeshi na training camps zozote zinapeana security Kenya. Kuliko wafanye kazi ya history huko, wakuje hapa practically.
The late Martha Cheruto died at only 17 years. The armed bandits shot her thrice in the chest. Her younger sister, the late Consolata Chebiwot, suffered gunshots to her head. She had just turned 15 years old.
Na tunataka kuambia rais kwamba hawa watu wanajaribu uwezo wako. Wameamua kujaribu kama wewe unaweza. Rais usikubali wa kujaribu namna hiyo. Rais nataka nikuombe ikiwezekana uonyeshe sura yako ya kuhakikisha kwamba Wakenya wako na amani.
Many of those who spoke challenged the government to honor the slain girls by restoring lasting peace to the lawless Kerio Valley.
If it is full compensation, tuandike na kama hata Afrika hapa kotini ya Kenya imeshindwa, sisi kama viongozi wa hapa tuungane tuende hata East Africa Court.
Tunataka compulsory brutal disarmament ifanyike upande wa Tiati kwa sababu na bunduki hakuna chochote, hakuna maendeleo.
Kuja useme pole zako.
The life of the late Martha Cheruto came to a close just as she was about to join Form 4, while her younger sister, the late Consolata Chebiwot, would have joined Class 8 this year. On the 1st of January, bandits killed the 2 girls for a herd of 77 cattle which they were grazing.
As we look back in time, we find ourselves wonderful. If we thank you enough for all of you.
The lack of law and order in the Kerio Valley has seen continued deaths and displacements, but bandits struck a new law by killing of the 2 minor girls.
Kama inawezekana Boena pewe nafasi aongee na rais na makamu rais au watatu peke yao, awaambie vile anasikia. Nafikiri wakiongea nao watatu wakitoka tutapata amani.
Nasema pole sana kwa mwanafunzi wetu, alituacha, tumeshtuka sana, hata hatujakubali mpaka sasa. Napoteza mwanafunzi ambaye.
The parents of the 2 girls were too dejected to even utter a word. Lois Wangwe, NTV, in the county of Elgeyo Marakwet.
All right, let's take a look at the news diary. And President William Ruto is set to attend the GSU pass-out parade in the last 2 days. Remember, he was in Kiganja and yesterday in Embakasi. And the Cabinet Secretary for Agriculture, Mithika Linturi, has a press conference scheduled with the Kenya Tea Development Agency. KEWOPA, Kenya Women Parliamentarians, are meeting in Naivasha starting today for 3 days. And the Engineers Board is holding a sensitization workshop. And Human Rights Watch is to launch a 2023 report. So that is what we're keeping our eye on today, and which will inform the stories we'll be reading in the papers tomorrow, as well as airing on NTV today. Okay, let's take a look at the newspapers now. My panelists, 2 of my panelists already in studio. One is joining us via Zoom, and that is Sylvia Mulama. Let me zoom in here before we get into the dailies, just so I can catch you up if we didn't meet at the very top of the hour on what we're discussing this morning. Kenya Kwanza sibling rivalry Teething problems or house on sand is the question. And with me already in studio is Vivian Ta, and she is a governance and political analyst. We also have a community outreach coordinator. She organizes donations to those who are in need in Kenya. She lives in the United States but is in the country. Judy Oyuyo, good to have you this morning as well. And Florence Machio should not be too far away. Here she is. Right on time. Florence, excellent timing. And she's an equity champion. She works in the women's rights space. So these are my guests. That's the topic. And I'm sure they'll have something to say about some of the stories we'll encounter on the front pages this morning. Top story, Daily Nation. Ghost workers, paradise in the counties. Complicity, 25 governors promised staff audits within 2 weeks of assuming office, to weed out ghost workers. Only 8 counties enforced the investigations that have revealed at least 4.3 billion shillings has been looted. Senate dragging its feet on an investigation into the loss of over 35 billion shillings since 2013. Governors have ignored order to file responses to a Senate committee probing the scam. And the Daily Nation continues to explain on its front page that cleaning up payrolls to stop cash leakage was top of the manifestos of most governors ahead of the 2022 elections. 4 months after taking office, few have taken action, even as the malaise continues to eat into county revenues. Who are the crooks drawing billions of shillings in salaries without offering labor, and who is protecting them? All right, Vivian, what do you make of this top story on the front page of the Daily Nation? Audits by 8 counties have revealed loss of 4.3 billion shillings. I can't say it's a surprise to me, given the statements made by Simba Arati in Kisii when he assumed office and actions he took. Also saw Wavinyandeti in Machakos talking about people receiving salaries who are even underage. It's not surprising to me, but is it surprising to you?
It's not surprising to me. The interesting thing is that I think this is the 3rd group of governors we're having since the promulgation of the Constitution. And in the beginning, when the office of governor was introduced, the devolved governments, a lot of people didn't know what was expected. But I think most of the governors who did their first term in 2013 and then in 2017 may have taken advantage of the power that comes with the office, and the fact that maybe there's not as much accountability as we'd like to see in regards to county government, maybe revenues and county government resources, which probably because Senate is supposed to oversight the county executives. Maybe we need to see more laws or just legislation or measures in place to see that we have more accountability, especially in the county governments. I think a lot of governors, not all of them, but many of them, especially the very initial ones, may have taken advantage of just, the laxity and used it to employ people who may not have been qualified, or even just to, as a loophole of siphoning money out of the counties. So if audits can be done, forensic audits can be done in all the 47 counties, so to speak, I'm sure we'll realize that a lot of money, a lot of public resources have been lost through mismanagement in the county governments. I think in 2019 or in 2020, sometime back, there was a report done by the Auditor General's office. And Nairobi County at that time, I think we had lost like 45 million or something like that, some crazy amount. So I'm not surprised. I'm not surprised that there's an issue of ghost workers in the counties, but it definitely calls for extra and more accountability at the county level.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, we had the transitional authority and we had people seconded to the counties when counties were first established. So, but then the problem of ghost workers was there even prior. Is it possible, Judy, that the governors who took office, I mean, they were just setting down roots, trying to establish the foundation, as it were, foundations of these county governments. is it possible that these things were happening not necessarily with their active participation, but under their noses?
And I believe that is true, and I totally agree with what Vivian says. And first of all, thank you so much for having us this early morning, on this cold Thursday morning. I agree with what Vivian says. There has to be some accountability, transparency, and if it's lacking, then obviously the governors are going to do whatever they like. I mean, it's no wonder even during elections, you do see them, people, I'm not saying those governors, but people use even dead people's IDs. So there obviously has to be some accountability to that. And also, isn't there some record keeping? Who does the books? How do you account for monies that are lost to these ghost workers? How do you account for people who are paid in their underage? And also, I agree with what Vivian says, hiring people who are not qualified to do the job. There definitely has to be a lot of accountability. And obviously, the fashion is they've been doing this from previous administrations to now the ongoing. So obviously, what's going to make them stop? So going forward, it is very imperative that there has to be some sort of accountability and maybe a committee, maybe a budget committee, an employment committee that is set up for governance and, you know, this kind of things to make sure the loophole is sealed, that these kind of things do not happen, because how much more are we going to lose as Kenyans? That money can be used towards other things. So this is really, really unfortunate.
All right. Florence, I have the mic to you. Good morning.
Morning, how are you?
Good, good. So, I mean, this is a problem that was even for the county governments. We've suffered from the problem of ghost workers when it was Nairobi City Council before it became the Nairobi County government. Is it fair to lay the blame on the doorstep of those who first, of the inaugural, as it were, governors in the counties? Or, I mean, because a lot was happening then, you know, this counties were being established, or, you know, they're working with putting in, I mean, they're trying to put in systems. Most times it's a work in progress. We had the transitional authority, do you remember?
Yes.
Yeah, and many times workers were seconded to the counties. So is it fair to lay the blame on their doorstep?
I think it's fair because somebody has to stop the leakage. And it is the responsibility of county governments and any leader who comes in place to clean up the house. You can't say because it was happening before, therefore I will do nothing about it, or I'll allow it to continue going on. I know of a governor, and I'm not going to name names, it's a previous governor, who actually by the roadside, when he meets young people and the young people ask for jobs, he actually puts them on the payroll, or, you know, and so that particular county has really suffered, and I'm glad there's another person who is looking like they're doing the job. And so it means that if somebody wanted to stop the leakage, it goes back to you. I mean, we have devolution government, meaning we're bringing more resources to the counties, meaning we want the counties to develop. It is upon you as the governor to ensure that all the resources that come to you are utilized properly, irrespective of whether the previous government used to do, you know, the wrong thing. It's like saying we will perpetuate corruption because corruption has always been there. Somebody has to stop the leakage. Yeah.
All right, so my panelists in studio say they're not cutting the governors any slack. They say the buck stops with the heads of the counties. All right, the other story on the front page actually informs our conversation this morning. Silent war rocks Kenya Kwanza. The public war of words between Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua and Nairobi Governor Johnson Sakaja has been raging for some time, but the county boss seems to be backing down, and there have been signs of a past struggle between the DP and Prime Cabinet Secretary Musalia Mudavadi that just wouldn't go away, although in the pecking order, it is not in dispute that Gachagua is the boss. I'll leave that one pending because we'll spend more time on it. I see at the top here, Palace Intrigues in Prince Harry's explosive memoirs. The title of the memoirs is from the British phrase of an heir and a spare. Harry is the spare, and it refers to two children in a monarch, one to succeed to a title and the other to guarantee the family line should anything happen to the first. I see they have another story here. Gachagua takes war to cartels. The DP cautioned brokers and cartels in the tea and coffee sectors that the government would deal firmly with them. And oh dear, you could soon be required to wear a mask again. And just as we were starting to breathe easy, all right, I see here another story actually that was also on the front page. There's a young girl here in uniform. Parents, teachers clash over junior high uniform. National Parents Association Chair Silas Obuhatsa said a different uniform is not necessary for the grade 7 learners, adding that they can be allowed to wear the same ones they wore in grade 6. He said parents should be protected from exploitation due to the high cost of school uniforms. Florence, do you agree?
I'm a parent of a child who is in class 8, the last one of 844, and I have another one in CBC. And even then, my son is going to grade 5, and he has to wear a different uniform because he's apparently in, there's lower primary, and then there's, I don't know, mid, and then now there's a junior secondary. So I think for me, given the fact that we were thinking of mixing them up, it's important that I don't mind them having something different, maybe a tie or something that just makes, or a jacket that makes them feel they are slightly in that junior secondary space. So, and then remember, the government initially had said that our children will go to high schools to be in junior secondary classes will be in high school. Now that has been changed, but if that was going to happen, it would have been definitely necessary for those children to have a different uniform. So I don't have a problem with that, but also I also would argue with the same parents who are saying no, they should remain with the same uniform if they're in the same school, because the economy is not also favoring us right now. But I also know that as our children are growing, every year you're forced to buy new uniform anyway because the children are growing. So unless the cost is prohibitive, I think it's okay. Either way, but that shouldn't stop a child from going to school simply because they didn't, you know, have a particular uniform. Yes.
All right. Fair enough. And Sylvia Molama has joined us. She's in London. And perfect segue to the topic that comes up next, or at least the report that we're going to look at next in the Daily Nation. Good morning, Sylvia. Sylvia was contesting the Westlands parliamentary seat in August last year on an ANC ticket, and the story we're looking at next on the Daily Nation is this: palace intrigues in Prince Harry's explosive memoirs, and there's some giveaways here. This report has been done by John Mwazemba, and he also spills the beans. The giveaways are this: Harry writes nostalgically on the memories of his mother, noting that thinking about her gave him hope and energy. He reveals that he imbibed cocaine, a revelation that is quite shocking and which some critics could use against him. 3, he also gives the number of soldiers he killed in combat, a tidbit that is likely to be refuted. And 4, he also writes about his experience of leaving Britain for America. I mean, just prior to the release of The Spare, we saw media reports of Harry and William getting into a tussle. Harry claims William tore his shirt and his necklace, and they were fighting over, not necessarily, okay, when I put it like fighting over Meghan, it's like, you know, okay, but the issue in contention at the time, according to these memoirs, was Meghan. Perhaps, Sylvia, if you don't mind me putting you on the spot a bit, what are you hearing there in the United Kingdom? How have they received these memoirs as penned by Harry?
Hi, Olive. Good morning, all the ladies in the studio. I just had, I didn't hear the last question. I had, of course, the run through the Harry story. Can you just repeat the question again, please?
What are you hearing, qua ground, Huko? What are people saying? What's the response to the revelations contained in these memoirs?
Yes. Okay. The story on the ground is hot. It's the headline in the news at the moment. Well, it's a mixed reaction from the different people. Some mothers are reacting differently. The general public, the male are reacting differently, particularly to the military story. However, it's a story that is sad, but at the same time interesting, you know, to come out at this point in time. Let's wait and see how it develops, particularly from the family side, because all he's wanting is to be able to reconnect with family.
All right, thank you, Sylvia. Ladies, do you think there's some secrets that should remain hidden, Vivian?
Okay, I think it depends. He should use his discretion, because at the end of the day, everyone is allowed to tell their story. He's the only one who knows what he experienced. He knows what's at stake. And I don't think people should really have a go at him for revealing some things. At the end of the day, it's his story. And it's his prerogative, on what to reveal or not to reveal. Whether there are people who are not happy about it, or there are people who are feeding off of it. I think let people give him a chance. Let's hear him. In any case, he had already, sort of abdicated his claim, in the royal family. So I'm good with it. Let's hear everything.
You're here for the tea.
Yes.
Judy, I see you nodding.
I really admire Harry. I remember, I'll never forget, August, I think it was 1997, when Prince Harry was, I think he was 7, was he 7 or 9? He had his head bowed down when they were marching on the behind the mother's casket with his father, and and I was like, wow, this boy. And he said something, and I was like, oh, my heart just went out to him. He says here, Harry writes nostalgically on the memories of his mother, noting that thinking about her gave him hope and energy. And I absolutely agree with Vivian. There's nothing wrong with him telling his story, his memoirs. Of course, some things, yes, it's good to leave some things secretive to the family, because you don't know what somebody can do with that information. They can come and hurt you, and that's not his intent. I don't believe so. But also, I think the picture of Meghan coming into his life was it's a trigger for a lot of things. The British, unlike the Americans, are very they're quiet, they're conservative. So obviously, Meghan is not. I mean, she was an actress.
Yes.
And I believe some of the things that he's doing is because maybe of her pushing, maybe not intentionally, and also he's trying to protect his wife. So there's a lot of things he's gone through because he was not really accepted. There've been a lot of things we're talking about her. She's black. So I think for him, I applaud him for what he's doing, but I do agree some things need to be not said. But obviously, as Vivian says, it's his story. Let's hear him. After all, he's the spare. He'll never be the king. Let's hear what the spare has to say.
All right. Florence, my thing is this, right? Harry admits to some questionable decisions, choices in his life. Remember when he wore, I think it was a Nazi uniform to a Halloween party at some point. In your mind, are some of the revelations he's making, or you're here, I'm sure, have you read the book?
No,
I haven't read the book either. I'm just reading the reviews, but having read them, do some of the revelations he's made, do they strike you as questionable choices?
Well, I think he was being a child, as a child can be. And what he's showing us is that, remember, we've grown up thinking about the British monarchy and how stuck up it is, and how they are not actually, these are my words, how they are not, how almost, I mean, they can't be that perfect. Really, can they be that perfect? And so he's showing us, actually, we're not that perfect. And we knew they were not perfect. It's just that we didn't have evidence of. And so somehow he's trying to show us we're just human, the way Diana was. Diana came out to show us we're human. I have feelings. I know this is going on in my marriage, but I'm going to speak up. And of course that didn't, augur well with the monarchy. But she spoke. Unfortunately, she lost her life. But as for Harry, I think it is okay, because we are now demystifying the monarchy slowly by slowly as the years go by, and therefore it is okay, I think, for him to speak the truth. And I don't believe in family secrets. I believe people should speak their truth and be liberated, instead of carrying on the burden of the family for the rest of your life while you're suffering. So yeah.
All right, speak your truth.
Yes.
Speak your truth is what I'm hearing. And it's so funny because when I was growing up, my aunts were so invested in the happenings at Buckingham Palace. One of my aunts, she's called Mune, had 2 cats. One was named Diana and the other one was Kristen Dodi. And I remember coming across, like Hello Magazine and reading about all these, what they wore, where they were, what they're doing. Yeah. All right, here is the topic of conversation. I'll just gloss over it for now. Sharp differences, power struggles, test Kenya Kwanza unity. Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua and Nairobi Governor Johnson Sakaja have been engaged in a public spat over the matatu and entertainment businesses. We'll get into that in a short while. And yesterday I saw a picture of them. Somebody shared a picture of them shaking hands. At a glance, a fight between DP Gachagua and Governor Sakaja, without directly naming him, Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua threw the gauntlet to Governor Johnson Sakaja, accusing him of interfering with businesses owned by people from Mount Kenya. This was based on the plans by Mr. Sakaja to move matatus out of the city center and his move to ban nightclub operations in residential areas. Mr. Gachagua said the two moves by the governor were targeting the Mount Kenya community, yet they had overwhelmingly voted for Sakaja in the August elections. But Sakaja said his actions were only aimed at bringing order to the city. Recently, Sakaja appeared to be backing down from the public fight, saying that the differences he has with the DP will be ironed out through talks. All right, let's see. There have been signs of a power struggle between the DP and Prime Cabinet Secretary Musalia Mudavadi at the national level, and other feuds that are ongoing in the counties and constituencies. At the very start of the show, I did highlight some of those differences. I will do this. I will leave the Daily Nation at that point. We'll get back to it when we take a look at, when we get into the conversation. All right, betting firms to pay taxes daily as KRA tightens news. Front page of the Business Daily. I see down here, banks cut loans to state by 104 billion shillings over low returns. Banks more than halved lending to the government last year as they sought higher returns that the Central Bank of Kenya wasn't willing to offer. Official domestic public debt data shows. And World Bank warns Kenya on sovereign debt risk. We really got into this subject yesterday on tax and debt. You can find the full video on NTV Kenya, the YouTube channel, that is. Kenya's banking sector is among 3 listed by the World Bank on the continent, facing high exposure to sovereign debt caused by the government's rising debt distress. Taxman misses revenue target by 32 billion shillings in 5 months. Tax collection in the first 5 months of the current financial year fell short of the target by 32.2 billion shillings, puncturing President William Ruto's revenue mobilization plan. He did say he's aiming to increase revenue collected by 8 trillion shillings over the course of 24 months. This does not bode well. And Safaricom share fall eases market concentration fears. The slide in the share price of Safaricom to a 2-year low has seen its share of investor wealth at the Nairobi Securities Exchange decline to below 50%, easing market concentration concerns among the top 4 firms at the Bourse. All right, Taifa Leo, front page, Pepo wa Mauti. Tua Kisii. What informs this headline? Msururu wa mauaji ya kutisha na vituko vingine vya ajabu katika eneo la Gusii umeibua hofu tele miongoni mwa wakazi wa Wakenya na Wakenya kwa jumla. Mauaji hayo ya kiholela yamekuwa yakihusishwa na uhalifu wa kupangwa, matatizo ya kiakili, migogoro ya kifamilia, disturbing. And here we have Chiloba, another, I mean, it was such a gruesome murder given the reports. Chiloba aliaga kwa kukosa hewa kupumua. Ripoti ya upasuaji yasema mwanaharakati huyo aliuawa kwa kufungwa puani na mdomoni. I believe I read socks. His mouth was stuffed with socks. All right, let's take a look at the front pages of the Star and the Standard. This was the first headline, Vivian, that struck Vivian. The minute she walked into studio, she looked at the paper, she's like, what? Super gonorrhea strikes Nairobians. Camry says such cases have been reported in Kenya before, but not of this magnitude. Okay, and then I see at the top here, Ruto in 2-day development tour of Raila Odinga's Nyanza backyard. More relatives fight over burial of son in 500-acre disputed land. Beneficiaries, winners and losers as new CDF sharing of formula takes effect. Front page of the Standard now. Oh dear. Worst drought in 40 years hit Kenyans hard. Government describes the drought situation as the worst in 4 decades after insufficient short rains in 22 counties, as the Treasury warns that 2023 will be a bad year for the economy. I mean, what a way to start the year, right? Okay, so an image there, various images actually on the front page of the Standard. They tell us 4.5 million is the number of people in dire need of relief food in Kenya. All right, I will leave the dailies at that point and we can get into the conversation of the day on the other side of the break. But before then, just to get your thoughts quickly, Edwin Chiloba was trending, you know, we've consistently followed his story, covered it. Why do you think there's been this interest? Is it because Kenyans are curious about his sexual orientation? Is it the gruesome nature of the murder? Because even the international community has picked up this story particularly. I'll start with you, Florence.
I think in the beginning, when the story broke out, I was very careful not to respond quickly until I got the facts. And so what you saw is everybody rushing out to make a conclusion that it was a homophobic murder or attack on the late Chiloba, as opposed to waiting for the facts. And so after waiting for the facts, my challenge, and you know I'm in the space of matters GBV, I think we lost an opportunity to discuss the issues of intimate partner violence as a community, as a Kenyan community, because it doesn't matter whether you whatever your sexual orientation, it just shows, if what we are now seeing as coming out from the police, it shows that you could be in any form of relationship and experience intimate partner violence. And therefore we need to ask ourselves as a country, have we put structures in place that if I'm in a same-sex relationship and I am undergoing violence, that when I go to get an OB, the police won't start asking me questions, because you know, issues of same-sex is an illegality in this country. And so it makes it very difficult for people to probably report. If we are struggling with domestic violence, reporting and being asked, but he's your husband, why are you reporting him? Can you finish at home? Now you can imagine if you're in a taboo relationship for this, you know, society, being able to go and report. So I think we've missed out. While we were all focused on how he died and probably this being homophobic, we forgot a very critical matter, which is intimate partner violence, and especially in relationships that are not what we feel should be, and therefore stifling it further, because people will not be able to report such cases. And it is a reality that there is violence within those kind of relationships. Yes.
Okay. So basically what I'm hearing you say is there's a bigger issue at hand. Whatever his sexual orientation, the bigger issue is intimate partner violence and ability to report these cases. I mean, when you read reports of, for example, what was it, this gentleman in Embu who killed the quote-unquote a family of 7.
Yes, because he thought he was killing, he went all the way to try and find his ex-wife and burn the ex-wife with the current partner, and missed the house and killed a different family.
And our top story yesterday evening was actually very concerning. A 50-year-old man who was in a relationship with a 9-year-old girl in Narok.
It was a child marriage, and it's against the law, and maybe that is why he's gotten the sentence that is, yes, because you're not, the Children's Act is very clear around child marriage, and therefore you see you're going to be prosecuted on 2 counts, you know, child marriage, also sexual violation of a minor, that means defilement. And so when you put that together, the sentence was actually right, because if the society continues to allow older men to marry children, yet it's against the law, that's what you're going to face.
Quite a number of disturbing reports. I will give the rest of my panelists opportunity to respond on the other side of this break. All right, welcome back to AM Live. We're just flipping through the papers on the other side. We're addressing the question of intimate partner violence. And my panelists were making the point even during the break that this is not restricted to women. Even men suffer from this. And we need to have conversations, they say, and I agree on these issues. I can see page 12 of the Standard. They've done a special report, and this one is on, so aside from child marriage, these ones are talking about botched circumcision, rise of botched circumcisions, how quacks are hurting our boys, poor hygiene to blame for cases of cat gonorrhea. Experts now say many boys are being cut in dirty environments, which raises the risk of infection. Doctors suggest that circumcisers be trained on proper health measures, preferably in a hospital setup. And I see Doctors Regulatory Agency wants experts to perform circumcision. Are there certain clearly the aspects, certain aspects of our culture that require some interrogation, right? I mean, just again, I keep coming back to this story of a 50-year-old man who married a 9-year-old girl who then died in childbirth. Your take, Vivian.
Heartbreaking. I can't even imagine. 9-year-old is a child, not someone who should be dying in childbirth. I mean, that's someone who should have like a bright future ahead, should be going to school, should be playing with, you know, her age mates. It's crazy how we let a lot of illegalities, you know, go on in the society in the name of culture, which is very retrogressive. And it brings me back to this question we're talking about, the LGBTQ activist. I don't know why the story was packaged so much around his sexual orientation, because if it was just any other man or any other woman who's not an activist of, you know, LGBTQ, it would not be the story. I don't think the story would be that big. I don't think the story would be about, you know, ex-activist. So we made it so much about his sexual orientation and forgot that there are so many other men, women, people who get killed in, you know, intimate partner violence that maybe don't get talked about as much, or even if it's talked about, it's like we talk about it during the time that the story is hot, and then after that it's forgotten. We had the case of Ivy, you know, who was hacked, and many other cases. That's just one, but the story should not have focused so much on his sexual orientation, but on the crime committed and how to ensure that going forward we have less, you know, such cases. I'd also like to see, I think is the point that Florence. Yeah, I'd also like to see what the government will do around. We know same-sex relationships are illegal, essentially, as per our law. And if really we are a country that follows the rule of law, we just sweep it under the carpet? I mean, how are we going to handle it? I'd like to see how the government would handle that issue going forward. The story made it look like, you know, all the other Kenyans who may not ascribe to same-sex relationships are homophobic. Yet that's not the case. I think a lot of people are just, you know, do your thing, we'll do ours, you know, and they don't really get involved. Most people maybe don't agree, but they just don't, you know, don't get involved in that kind of thing. But if the government is serious about keeping the rule of law, not just in matters corruption or in matters governance, I'd like to see what is going to be done around the issue of, you know, same-sex relationships. It's not something that we want to see propagated.
Okay. Yeah. There were campaigns, you know, in terms targeting this group in particular, because they're also susceptible, for example, to the HIV/AIDS scourge, and there was concern that sometimes they're afraid to seek out healthcare because they're afraid of being stigmatized or how they'll be received, and all that. But bringing us back to the 9-year-old girl. You work with teen moms, Judy, in the area of reproductive health.
I do. And you know, Kenya, I really pray for Kenya a lot. And when I'm not in the country, I'm leaving next week, I follow the news. I watch NTV, I watch Citizen. And what I see is a lot of coping of what's happening in the West. This teenage mother is a very sad thing. And initially when I started practical global evangelism, I was mainly working with orphans and widows, but the last 3 years, God has changed it to where now I'm working with more teenage mothers. In Kenya, I go to slums. And also wazees. There's so many wazees who need adult diapers. On December 19th, 2022, I had my first event in Kenya, and I went to Kayole Sabasaba. There are about 250 teenage mothers with their children. And at the end, we normally do the events from 12 noon until like 4. We start with prayers, praise and worship, and then I had some acrobats, paid them to come and entertain them because we want to pamper them for that day. At the end of the day, and then fed them, and then I gave them sanitary pads, which I bought, and some were donated to me. At the end of the day, I asked them, can you tell me, why are you like this? What made you become a teenage mother at, say, 14, 17? What happened? What are you doing about it? Do you have any regrets? And what are you doing to secure your future for yourself and for your child or children? Sadly, most of them practice sex because maybe they are bored, or maybe some of them, by the way, they go into sexual, premarital sex, teenage sex with older men who maybe give them money for sanitary pads, which is a big need. So they do not know that when you have sex, you're on your menstrual, you're gonna get pregnant. So it's very, very unfortunate, but it is a rising number of teenage mothers that really needs to be curbed. We need to nip it in the bud before it grows into this big monster. So many of them don't understand what's happening, but at the same time, men are taking advantage of the needs of these children. Some of them don't go to school during their menstrual cycle. So obviously, a man tells you, hey, I'll give you 200 shillings, 200 tuka. We do this thing. The case of that 9-year-old is very sad because I think men need to zip it. We all adults, you know what I mean. If you have that need and you can't control yourself, there are many, I know there are sex workers, go to Konanga Street, even Hurlingham, they have them. Why do you want to, as she says, why do you want to destroy that child's life? That is a demon, that's a spirit, that's not a human being. You are not thinking rightly, and obviously something is taking over your body and your manhood. Why do you want to go and destroy this child? Okay. Call it like it is, and I think there needs to be serious laws. She said it was very lax. Laws, the government needs to put serious laws in place, and I don't know if there needs to be a ministry of women or something. They need to put in place serious laws that if you sleep with this child, in fact, let's get him executed.
We do have serious laws.
Because we have serious laws because this guy has been convicted a life sentence.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. I think even execution. To teach them, yes. America, we don't play.
Clearly, you take.
I'm from Texas.
And you're from Texas.
Yes. Capital punishment. What? Execution.
Yeah. All right. So, I mean, she said pepombaya, and then
no, really pepo. 9-year-old. What?
No, I mean, what you're forgetting, the fact that this man actually went through the process of marrying this child. So the community allowed for marriage. Because of the chief should not. The chief knows who dies in a village. The chief knows who is married. The chief knows whether there's an initiation ceremony. Where was the chief? And for me, I think it needs to go beyond the perpetrator. The enablers of this crime also need to face the law. Why? Because I think as a society we sit here and condemn, and we allow certain things to go on within our midst, and we say nothing in the name of culture, in the name of religion, in the name of whatever it is that we use to perpetuate that particular vice. This child at 10, pregnant. I mean, even the Constitution talks about, and I know I will get a lot of vilification around this one, that when the life of the mother is in danger, they should not be allowed to carry that particular pregnancy. This child was 10. You tell me whether they are formed enough to even carry a pregnancy in the first place. First, one wrong was done. She was married. Secondly, she was made pregnant. For me, this man was violating this child every night of all the days that she was married. And that I mean, if there was capital, punishment, maybe that would have worked, because this life sentence is not even enough, because every day there was a violation going on. Exactly. So we as a society, the laws are there. It is the implementation, and implementation will not be the police alone. Implementation will need you and I saying, hey, wait a minute, that is wrong going on there. And the chief, I think, should not be having a job right now as we speak.
You know, and you know, sometimes if I could just put in, I work for a company. The company I work for, I do fundraising for non-profits, and they said in Kenya, it's one of them is Catholic Medical Missions, Medical Relief, and they say in Kenya, oh, there's winter. I said there's no winter in Kenya. They say, well, the mothers are because of poverty, they're selling their children early, and they mentioned the Somali. So certain communities in Kenya, they do allow for early marriage. So even the parents, because of poverty, you're going to sell off your child. And they even say that, so me, when I'm working, there's a script they give you, and I change that script. And I say it's not only it doesn't happen in Africa, it's certain communities in Africa. Well, let me talk of Kenya, because Kenya, I know it happens in Kenya. I know some communities, Somali, Samburu, they sell, Maasai even, they sell off their children early because of poverty. So there needs to be talks around the economic empowerment. There need to be talks around protecting the child until they're 16, they finish high school, then they're an adult, they can do whatever they want, but not at 9, surely. Don't let the parents speak for her and say, hey, go and get married. What's going to happen, as she says, they're not developed, the sexual organs are not developed. She's going to get fistula, where she cannot hold her urine, she cannot hold her bowel movement, it's just going to come out. And then what? When I first came to Kenya, there was a case of that, a similar child, I can't remember, I think somewhere in Nairobi, I can't remember. A man raped her, she was really young, and I think she even had a baby, but she's been sick for a whole year with fistula, and the parents don't know what it is. If they were educated enough or knowledgeable enough, they could have gotten help for her, but nothing has been done for her. So she thinks she's dying. I saw it, I can't remember what network, but I saw that and I was like, oh my goodness. Okay,
it's about time when I need to move us along to the conversation. Last word on this.
I didn't want this to pass
and Sylvia, I will come to you in just a moment. You'll kick us off.
For the audience, it's that it's not just that people marry off their children because of poverty. I did a campaign around in 25 schools in Africa, some of them in Kenya, and I went to a school in this country, in Nairobi, in a high school, where a girl told me that she's already married off, and the reason she's in school is because the parents know if she doesn't show up in school, the teacher will go and check why she has not come. So she knows she'll finish Form 4, and the man who will come to pick her will not be her brother, it will be her husband. And this family is not poor. This is a high-end school in Nairobi. So it's not a matter of poverty. The parents who are actually just marrying off their children, and yet it is against the law. And so because it is chini ya maji, you find it's very difficult to say, okay, wait a minute, what happened? And so if we start pushing for, within our schools, for children to start speaking up of what is going on at home, then maybe we'll arrest some of these cases early enough. Okay. Yeah.
All right, Sylvia, I'll transition us to the topic of conversation, which is the Kenya Kwanza administration and the sibling, we call it sibling rivalry, watoto wa nyumba moja, that we've seen play out in the public domain. And given we're talking about siblings, is it a teething problem? People trying to find their space, or is it a question of their house? They came together not necessarily on principle, but in the interest of self-interest. But interestingly enough, because we're talking about botched circumcisions, and Edwin Sifuna posted to Twitter a letter, right, in response, especially. So we'll start with Nairobi County and the spat between, I'll call it a spat between the Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua, exchange of words with Johnson Sakaja, and the quote-unquote reported Cold War between himself and Musalia Mudavadi. And I just want to pull up some of these, and I said botched circumcision because somehow the conversation degenerated to the question of circumcision, and I was like, wait a minute, is this really what this is about? Let me just find that tweet, Edwin Sifuna.
I've seen it.
Someone tweeted. Let me find it, and he retweeted. Because I think somebody said Rigathi cannot respond. Like, seriously. All right. Yeah, here it is. And it's the last tweet from 2 days ago. And a gentleman called Joseph Obuchere was responding to another gentleman on Twitter who said, Senator Sifuna, in our community, men do not argue with uncircumcised boys. They are left to be disciplined by their mothers. And then Joseph responded. He said, Sifuna is a Luya, more specific, a Bukusu. Yeah. Bukusu's invented circumcision. Do your research. Yeah, anyway, so that was the back and forth. But the issue at hand is this question of what is playing out in Kenya Kwanza. Does it come as a surprise? I'll start with you, Sylvia. Do you think it's teething problems, people still trying to find their place within the coalition?
Yes, but first I'll just say something briefly about the girl that had a baby and is just 9 years old. I have a 10-year-old and I cannot even fathom my 10-year-old being married. They don't know much. So as a society, we have issues that are underlying. Some of it is pegged on poverty, because poverty dehumanizes. And then some of it is due to our cultural background. And I think as a country, we need to have honest discussions, because I think we've deviated from family values and you know, just how we take care of the children, and also as a society, neglect of the GBV, which is the case of Chiloba. So we have lost grip a little bit, and I think we just need to have these conversations a lot more, because every 24 hours in Kenya right now, we are hearing of somebody dying due to family member or a spouse or a partner or a boyfriend. So that's just my take on that. Sibling rivalry, coming back to Kenya Kwanza, yes, that is our house. Yes, there is that in the air. It is happening right now, but what I can say is that let people settle into offices. There's a lot of excitement, and people have already been allocated positions, but there's a long road ahead. As we saw over the last weekend when the president called the cabinet retreat and the PSS, he was very stern about the functions, the delivery of the new government. And I think now people have gone back to offices with a lot on their plate to take care of, because this is a government of service delivery and there's no joke about it. I think as a country, we are experiencing, let's just say, a better level in our governance. And I think we need to settle into this new government, understand where we are going, understand our requirements as Kenyans, as they work for Kenyans. It's going to be hard, of course they've said that, economically, because we have been building the country on the sinking sand. All the years past, we've had a lot of developments that are based on intense borrowing, and we could not just sustain it. So it is time that we went back and jiggered our economy back from our own engineering, producing within the country, our own agriculture, our own industries, exporting and being able to feed our people, and collecting taxes that can be able to give us enough revenue to run our government.
All right, and just if I can make a correction, the child the girl was carrying is died. The child, not the girl. They're both children. Okay.
The children.
So yeah.
One child died.
The baby.
You know, when I say the child, they're both children. Yeah. Okay, so that's that clarification there. You can find that report again on NTV Kenya's YouTube channel. But Vivian, on this question of sibling rivalry in the Kenya Kwanza camp, again, I remember I asked you at the top when we were discussing ghost workers, and I asked you, are you surprised? Are you surprised?
Of course I'm not. This is a house sinking built on sand and it's sinking faster than we can blink. And first of all, before I even go further, I was told categorically by my people in Langata to make sure nimewasalimia. Oh, imbogia Langata nimewasalimia sana. The Imani Junior crew, I'll be lynched if I don't do this. Wow. So I need to say hello, guys, nimewasalimia sana. Na watambua, Mike, yeah, and the rest of the crew. Anyway, back to you. If you're from Western, you'll understand. What's a Western lazima to...
My director tells me pia yeye ni wa Langata na amesalimika.
Asante kabisa, that's good. Anyway, so back to Kenya Kwanza. First of all, I think this government came in on the promise of bottom up, which was a socially populist kind of ideology that is not sustainable. So I think Kenyans need to brace themselves for a lot of disappointments in the next, few years. I don't think a lot of those promises will be fulfilled. Maybe you can call me pessimistic, but I with everything that's happening, I don't see that happening. There are some good things that are happening that are being done, but they are not enough. Starting even just from how the government appointments were done, there's a lot of cronyism, very little consideration to qualification and experience in delivery of work, and more around loyalty and who is who to me, who is my crony, who is my friend, That is how appointments are kind of being dished out in this current government. But hey, it's the government we have, and we have to see it through, because in our democracy, it's a representative government. We are represented by the people we elect into office. But going to the Sakaja and DP Rigathi Gachagua feud, first of all, Rigiji votes in Madira. He is not a resident of Nairobi. Okay, no, maybe resident, but he's not a voter in Nairobi. Mambo ya Nairobi, aachie watu wa Nairobi. We vote in Nairobi. Collectively, myself and everybody who lives in Nairobi, we want a greener city. We want a better city. We want a more organized city. We want to live, work, play in a better place. We want more organization. We came from the Sonko regime. You all know how that was. And we are looking forward. There's a reason why Sakaja got majority of votes in Nairobi. It was not like one community support only. Everybody collectively got him into office. And we want to see him work. So I don't think that the blackmail, the tribal blackmail and loading over the governor that, do this or else. The only businessmen in Nairobi are not from the Mount Kenya region. There are very many others. And the truth is, a lot of Nairobians were affected by this issue of bars within estates. Maybe they don't speak, but they are affected. A lot of people. So we don't mind people doing business, but don't do it at the expense of the, mental well-being, social well-being of other Kenyans. We need to learn how to coexist. We have no problem with you doing business. Just don't let your business affect our well-being and the well-being of our children. If a child needs to go to school tomorrow, napiga kelele hadi saa 9 usiku, it's not acceptable. So I do not think, DP Rigathi Gachagua should be, blackmailing Deputy Governor Gachagua, Sakaja, yes, saying, oh, we will impeach you. Can he stick to his national duties, his office? Collectively, constitutionally, the deputy president and the president form the presidency. Did he say that
they would impeach Sakaja?
He didn't say it, not the DP, but, the people around the DP.
They've been actually quite a bit of flying about.
But I wanted to make the point that constitutionally, the deputy president and the president form the presidency. The presidency should be a symbol of unity in Kenya, not a symbol of you're fighting for Mount Kenya community. Who will fight for the people of Coast? Who will fight for the people of Turkana? Who will fight for the Kisses and people from Western and Nyanza? He has to wear a different hat. This is not 2017 to 2022 regime. Tumebadilika. We want to see unification. What we care about as Nairobians and as Kenyans is the economy. We want to see a change so that people have better income, so that people are able to earn, their livelihoods. We want to see an end to corruption. Can they stop this PR and this silly feuds? Hazitusaidi.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Judy, what do you make of this? Because I realize that there's a county government in place in Nairobi, but Nairobi also happens to be the capital city. Do you think DP Rigathi Gachagua had every right? Because Vivian has conceded that he is a resident of Nairobi. Do you think he had every right to speak up?
Gachagua, Rigiji, as they call him.
Rigiji.
I was watching the election happenings. In fact, I slept late because you guys are now, because it's winter for us, 9 hours ahead. And I was excited, and I was watching because I wanted to see how the handover will be from President Uhuru's presidency over to whoever's going to win, whether it's going to be Ruto or it's going to be Odinga. And I've always been one who is intrigued by the happenings of Kenya because of the nature of what I do in America, but also when I come to Kenya every year with the community outreach. In fact, I don't know if you guys know this, but every pre-election year and the year of elections, we had people like Musalia Mudavadi, we had people like Kalonzo Musyoka, Noah Wekesa, and I forget the guy, but a Muslim guy, Mohammed, who he was in a wheelchair, he broke his leg. I've met them all in the United States. Now, when they come, we go and we meet them, we organize a meet and greet for them at expensive hotels, we raise money, and within 10 or 30 minutes, they've raised money. My take has always been, don't make promises to us that you cannot give. Now, I'm saying this in the sense to make sure that I'm very interested in what's happening in Kenya, because I still have my family in Kenya. As a Kenyan American, I obviously come once a year.
And actually, the diaspora of late has been very vocal in that you can't only speak to us, speak about us when it comes to remittances and not involve us in governance issues.
Which I do commend this presidency for organizing. I think they have a diaspora rep now, which is really good. So this thing of Mr. Deputy Gachagua, I wasn't happy when I was watching the proceedings when they announced that President Ruto had won, and I felt like and then also the day of the inauguration, I felt like he disrespected President Uhuru.
This was the speech at the swearing in.
Yes, and it took President Museveni, can you imagine, of Uganda mentioning the legacy of President Uhuru in front of 18 presidents. African president. So what they're doing even publicly between Deputy Gachagua and him attacking Sakaja and then Mudavadi doesn't load well for Kenya. It gives a very ugly picture of the happenings. And I commend the president for coming in and saying, hey, trying to put in place, correct what is happening already, because if you don't do that as the head of the party, as a the country leader, then what's going to happen? People are just going to run amok and pretty much do whatever they can. And I like what Sakaja said. He says here that Nairobi is a business, it's an international area. We need to keep Nairobi with dignity and all that. Let Sakaja do his job. Already Kenyans, they said he didn't have a degree, and I think that he was, we all get that. But Kenyans, they have faith in him. So let Sakaja do his job. Gachagua, you are the DP, do your thing. And let President Ruto do his thing, which, by the way, President Ruto has a huge following of Nigerians in America. I am married in Nigeria, and I have many friends in the Nigerian churches, Redeemed and the Streams of Joy, and they, hey, Judy, we like your president, Ruto. I said, why? Is it because his daughter is married to Nigeria? I said, no, because he's a Christian. So President Ruto, if you're watching, you're listening, please just uphold. We've given you you are the one, God has put you there. We are told to pray for you according to 2 Timothy. It says in 2 Timothy 2 to pray for you. We will pray for you, but do what you're supposed to do as the president. And Gachagua, please, acheni na Sakaja afanye kazi yake.
All right, Florence, what's your take on all this? When President William Ruto was asked about this goings on, he talked about, Sakaja is a young man. We are just attempting to guide him.
No, I think he was trying to be diplomatic. Not to look like I don't agree with my deputy, or we are having also a tiff with my deputy, and also trying. I think he knew if he says he's a young man, it can pass. You know how the elders sweep away some things, and that's what he was trying to do. But like we say, allow Sakaja to do his work. Why? Because he can hide behind Rigiji's constantly saying things around Nairobi and then not deliver and then claim it's because of Rigiji. But we want to judge him based on what he's supposed to do for this county. As a voter in this county, I want to judge him by his works. And so if he's not allowed to perform, then there's a problem. And if he was from a different coalition, then I would say he's being fought because he's from a different coalition. But they're in the same house. Can't they just pick a call and talk to each other? Like what? Okay, I almost said something. What is this? And I remembered my son will ask me questions. But why can't you just pick the call and talk to him? If you have a challenge, if you have an issue. But maybe it is good that it's playing out in the open. Then we see, unfortunately, that our deputy president is leaning towards tribalism, something that we don't want. In fact, our children don't appreciate that kind of conversation. So that's a conversation we buried, or we are trying to bury as a nation, so that we start looking at things cohesively as opposed to tribe A, B, and C. So we can't be talking these tribal conversations all the time, especially because that was his tone of you know, talking about Sakaja's governance.
All right.
Yeah.
His tone actually since he took office.
Yeah.
It's been very tribal leaning.
Okay, and that's the question.
Right from his swearing
I'll wait. I'll leave for you, Vivian. But first, I want to hear from Sylvia, because hii ni nyumba yao. Alituambia hii ni nyumba yetu. But Vivian, the question I have for you, when after she responds, the next question I ask is Riggy G a straight shooter or a loose cannon? What's your take? But Sylvia, you talked about the economy, and I mean, even if you look at the front page of the Daily Nation today, the story there is Silent War rocks Kenya Kwanza. A couple of publications before this one, it was Cold War between the DP and the Prime Cabinet Secretary. Are we being fanciful as the media? Are we blowing things or creating a storm in a teacup?
I think media, no offense, but I think we are spicing things up way too far. Right now, you know, Kenyans are facing a lot of challenges, and I cannot, you know, we just 6 months, well, not even 6 months yet, post the elections, and some of us still have vivid memories of our constituencies, of our communities, just how people are suffering. And right now, what we need to focus on as a government is we have a new government in place. What is this government going to do for us? I know my sister from Langata said that, you know, this is a government on sinking sand. And I want to assure her that, you know, watch the space. Within the next 2 years, let's have this chat and see if this government is on built over a sinking sand. The fundamentals here are that the country is in a very, very precarious place. Economically, we are really badly off. We have a lot of debt, but, you know, we have a good fixer who is working 24/7 to get this in a right trajectory so that we can get back on the right path and have actually our economy come back from the lowest it has been. So what we need to do right now is to focus. We need to be highlighting people that are not paying taxes. We need to increase that tax bracket. I've said it over and over, that as a country, we have this superfluous feelings about different things, you know, what this person is doing to the other, the politics. We discuss politics from January to January, 24 hours a day. We discuss politics 365 days a year, you know, and we discuss politics every 5 years of the entire cycle. I beg to ask if Kenyans can take a pause and check the governance. Where are we going as a government? Is our elected leaders doing the right thing? And yes, we need to give them the chance to do the right thing. Kenya Kwanza has come in with a very, very clear manifesto, and all the agenda is out right now. All the cabinet have been given their mandate to deliver to the Kenyan people what needs to be done in the country right now to revive the economy. And it is going to be hard work. And I think you heard the president say, kuna wale wamepata kazi na kuna wale kazi imewapata. So only time will tell nani amepata kazi na ni nani kazi imempata. So we need to see this government work. Let's stop sideshows. Let's stop a lot of, you know, unnecessary critique. Let's focus on the right areas. Where is the extra money going to come from if we are not borrowing? That is what the president is trying to do. Where are we going to, how are we going to improve our economy? Yes, we have the best manpower almost in the entire Africa. We have a good infrastructure that has already been put in place, but it's not being used to our, benefit as a country. So these are the things that we need to be focusing on, particularly the tax collection. We have a lot of tax evaders, people that are just flying away in that country and not paying taxes at all. If we don't pay taxes, our education is not going to improve. Our healthcare is not going to improve. We need to focus on those things. As a Kenya Kwanza, the house, yes, it's new. When Mzee marries a wife and decides to get a second wife, because we are a coalition, there's always, fights here and there, but eventually the house settles down and kids settle into the house and they all work together. There has been wars here and there, but we should not focus on that. We need to focus on the agenda. There's a Kenyan person right now, somebody, in, let's say my constituency, Kangemi, who didn't eat last night. This person just needs to know they will eat. There's kids going to school within the next couple of weeks. How are these kids going to go to school? Their parents don't have school fees to pay for them. These are the discussions we need to be having on a serious note. How are we improving our economy from where it is to building a stable economy that will outlast even the rest of us in our lifetime?
All right, Sylvia, thank you. And just, I see Florence and Vivian and Judy want to respond, and I'll give you a chance. We just need to take a break. The question, actually, she's spoken repeatedly about we need to pay taxes to build our economy. We had a very comprehensive discussion yesterday with two economists, Professor Exan Iraki, University of Nairobi, Dr. Francis Omondi, Kenyatta University, and we had who as well? Irene Otieno from the National Taxpayers Association, and a gentleman from ISPAC, yes, Eric Misiani. You can find that conversation on the NTV Kenya YouTube channel, because I really don't want to get into taxes and debt now. We covered it yesterday. But responses to Sylvia from my panel on the other side of this break.
Kwa nini kunichenga chenga
miaka mitatu kule Japan,
kidogo tu
usomea kudunga watu,
utamu tu
sindane.
Jamani, tunachenga mpira ndani ya gumzo la Sato.
Sitaki mzee aliezeka, nataka kijana.
Sasa ni kazi wewe una vita na nikueleze. Bila utakuota kidogo. Ngoja. Hata mimi.
Tukijadili masuala yanayokuathiri wewe katika jamii.
Hii ni sura yangu na hii sura imeolewa.
Na mambo mingi kwa ndoa ambayo hayahusiani na mapenzi pekee yake.
Penda kweli, lakini pia tumia bongo.
Naloogopa kusema na wengine Frida twaliweka wazi.
Huyo mwanamume wa kizungu akaja na pupa, mwisho akabakishwa na kachumbari na maavocado.
I'm not get burden to her. Like she'll be feeding me like this.
Babu mimi namuelewa. Anajua anakoenda. Chiro hata afadhali ungeniuliza ngepale ndugu yangu mdogo.
Ombea.
Changes above and below.
Tropical rainforest is feeling the impact of the change in the weather patterns.
Medicinal plants living on borrowed time. After the huffs and puffs, we tell you about the tiny but toxic cigarette butts. Also, Africa's Tree of Life. We explore the baobab's health benefits.
Recharge and get upgraded to make memories with your loved ones this new year. Anytime, anywhere. Star Times. Enjoy digital life.
Welcome to the Ultimate Crew. This is a show that's going to test the contestants about endurance, and strength, and patience, and of course it's all about teamwork.
Sorry, monkey ball.
You cannot finish alone, you have to finish as a team.
Are you ready to be crowned the Ultimate Crew?
All right, welcome back to AM Live. Before we took the break, we had Sylvia, who is joining us from London, and she said that the media is simply seeking to sensationalize what is happening between the office of the Prime Cabinet Secretary and the DP. She tells us, focus. All right, your response, Florence.
I would love to focus, but when the Deputy President keeps on saying the same thing over and over again, unfortunately, he's on a level where the media will look at him because of his position in the government. He's second in command. And so if he keeps on saying the same line over and over again, it's sounding tribal, it's sounding antagonistic, it's sounding like, you know, we have no choice but to hear. It's like when the president keeps on saying something, of course we'll pay attention. Does it mean that we like politics? No, we want work to be done. We want service delivery. So how I wish he would echo then the president and keeps on talking about we need to collect taxes, we need to pay taxes, we need to do. That's what we want to hear the deputy president saying. And so that he forgets about, stops this conversation of Governor A and Governor B, Tribe A and Tribe B. Let him echo then the president, if that is where the president is going, unless he is going this other way. Yes, so if he does that, of course the media will focus on what he's saying.
And
yes.
I remember Judy
so it's not a matter of us pushing the narrative.
Tone right from the swearing in. All right, Vivian?
For me, I agree with Sylvia on one thing. The agenda for the people. Not all of us can be in State House. That is why we elect, you know, our leaders so that they form government, and we end up having a national executive, the legislature, and judiciary. But the thing is, power feuds are not uncommon, you know, among the political class, because people are essentially fighting for positions and for space. But can they handle them, you know, in-house? We don't have to know about, you know, their feuding or their disagreements. What we want is service delivery. You know, we want our debt, the country's debt, to be, you know, handled well, maybe reduced if possible. We want better healthcare. We want better education. You know, we want better infrastructure, all those things. We want a better economy so that parents can, you know, manage their families. But on the front of, like, say, corruption and just taxes, we mentioned it lightly before the break. We've seen so many cases of people perceived to be allies of the president or allies of the government, of senior people in government, cases being dropped. So, you know, sometimes you wonder, you're talking about increasing tax bracket and making sure we are making enough money so that we don't borrow. And yet cases are being dropped, you know, left and right for people who are perceived to be close. They say perception is reality. So when we see these things, we are like, oh, so all I need to do is be close to, you know, the who's who, and I'll just, you know, I'll go scot-free. Whatever cases I have will be dropped. So then what's the difference between them and the allegations they were making against President Uhuru Kenyatta, for example? When the government took over, there was a lot of camaraderie between, you know, the president and the deputy president and just some of the leaders within the Kenya Kwanza coalition. But remember, we've seen this before. This is like history repeating itself. In 2013, we had the, you know, bright-eyed boys, white shirts, red ties, walking hand in hand, best friends, but ilisambaratika. All that came to naught. So this is not new. That's why when I said this is a house built on sand and it's sinking, it's because we've seen this before. It's playing out again. Maybe silently under the current, and some, of course, coming to the fore. But this is the basis of me saying, let's not have very grand expectations. These were just promises that were made to win an election. It's like Kenya Kwanza was a special purpose vehicle built just to deliver these people, you know, past the election and inauguration. But really, is there synergy? I doubt it. Okay. I don't think so.
All right, and I'll pick that up from there. Although my question for you, Florence, just be thinking about it, isn't this democracy? This is the democracy we talk about, because even twins don't share the same mind. I mean, they have different personalities, so people are free to talk, regardless of them coming from Nyumba Moja. Are we not witnessing what our constitution espouses, which is freedom of speech, democracy? It doesn't matter whether they're from the same house. If I have a different view and you have a different view, we are all allowed to speak freely. So think about that. But to you, Judy, even Azimio, because some of the people who are now in Kenya Kwanza were in Azimio not too long ago. We've seen Raila Odinga, Martha Karua speaking to governors and their party members, telling them, we don't all have to be in government. So even Azimio seems to be going through similar waters. And even prior to that, Vivian talked about the Jubilee administration, bright-eyed boys, white shirts, red ties. I remember sleeves rolled up. Jubilee was promised, people were told, do away with your parties, let's all form one big coalition, and we'll change the way politics is done in Kenya. And then look what happened with Jubilee, right? From the party leaders right at the top. I mean, so in your view, are these coalitions or alliances, whatever view, are they more about, and has history shown us that they're more about self-interest? They always say that there are no enemies and friends in politics, and that is so true. I loved what I saw in May of this year. Azimio leaders, it was Raila Odinga, Right Honorable Raila Odinga, Martha Karua, and a few other people came with him, and I was so amazed. I live in Texas, so I obviously could not go to DC. And Anna Mwalago is a Kenyan who is now just recently graduated from something. Now she's a professor of Kiswahili. She was the MC. Then we had people like, I forget the names, but there were people who were the MCs, and people I know, because at one time I used to live in DC. What I loved about seeing that of Azimio, it was a unity of tribes of Kenya. It wasn't just two tribes. And I'm going to say this, and I don't know whatever, but I'm going to say it. It wasn't just Kalenjins or Kikuyus. Kenya belongs to 47 tribes. The 47th was made on August 17th, I think, 2017, by President Uhuru, the Indians. So Kenya is not all about the two tribes. In fact, I told my mom and dad, I said, I will never ever vote in Kenya again. I woke up very early in 2012 and I walked to where we live, which was barely 20 minutes. I walked and I cast my vote. I was the 15th person in line. But what we saw playing out on the media, and I love watching the way the media, you mimic the American voter counting and voter tallying and all that to show accountability. I love that. That's a good thing you're mimicking. And by 1 a.m. we're like, hey, this thing has gone the other side. So I said, hey, Daddy, let us go and sleep. When we woke up, it was... So I said, Mommy and Daddy, if you see me voting in Kenya again, I will never vote. But Judy, it's your vote. We need to go to Canada. I said, I don't care. I'm not voting. Going back to your point about Azimio, I loved what I saw. It was trapped. And I commend this government, current government. They really embrace women in leadership. Look at Nakuru County. From the government all the way to the MCA, of course, women are supposed to be a woman. I love that. So let's stop this thing at the two tribes. Me, I said you guys can have Kenya. Me, I vote in America, by the way. I always vote early because me, I hate queues. I always do my voting early and I forget it. But this year, for the first time, that's why we voted. This is something that we talked with when Zibo was the ambassador with Tom Amolo, he's the deputy. We talked about give us dual citizenship, give us absentia voting. And I must tell you, I was one of those who was very instrumental in America through the Atlanta Kenyan Professional Association. We'd have meetings with Honorable Zibo and his deputy, Tom Amolo. And we even have Mashuja in America, by the way, yes. In fact, Lazarus Samayo promised us that they're going to allow more embassies to be opened in America, so that those of us who live in Texas or California or New Jersey or Kansas City or can go and vote. Don't just tell us go to DC or New York. If you're working they're not going to let you go and vote for your country. They give you the day off to vote for America, which I do. But please involve us in the diaspora. And please, Kenya is not for two tribes. We are tired. You see, you are Kalenjin, Kikuyu.
Me, Luas, we feel like we've been left in the whatever. Since in fact we've left politics because we are just we don't matter to matter in Kenya. So me, I'm an American. I will vote in America because in Kenya my tribe doesn't matter. That is what we have been told.
Vivian, quick rejoinder.
Only if they have Miguna.
Oh, you have a leader in the diaspora. All right, and so what I'm hearing you say is there's no such thing as party loyalty in Kenya, because there were amendments to the Political Parties Act just before the election. I thought that might help things, help cure things, the ditching of parties. Florence, the question of democracy isn't this just democracy playing out?
I think the essence of democracy is not around, it's around development. It's around allowing for different opinions on how to do things, and constructive, not destructive. And if you know the history of this country, which I'm sure the Deputy President understands the history of this country, going from 2007 election, he should be very careful with what he says and when he says it and where he says it and to whom he says it, because Kenyans are listening. If he has any ambitions of maybe succeeding the current president later, you plant the seeds now in terms of how you speak and embrace other Kenyans outside of your tribe. And because you're in the presidency, there are some things you cannot speak about. And so this I don't look at it as democracy, especially when it comes from a leader. It's like, if I can simplify it, as a mother and father in a home, when there's a feud with the kids, there is a way that you arbitrate around it. There's a way. I will not take side. I have 2 children. I will not take sides with one. If I'm punishing you for that mistake, I cannot not punish you again for the same mistake that the other person did. So I have to be very careful how I speak to both children, and I have to be very careful when I say what I say. And if we are in agreement and in terms of how we are running this home, why should I be the one deviating and speaking left when we are supposed to be going right? And so that for me is not democracy, and it's not leadership, because leadership needs you to put aside your personal interest and look at the nation with a bigger lens and look at a bigger vision of where you want to take this country. Because 5 years come down the line, we'll be judging you based on, if the president is saying we are going this direction, did you support him or you did not? Now, if you supported him, we will see, because then we will see the results of that particular democracy. Democracy is what has allowed us to have, you have governors from Azimio, governors from whatever, you have members of parliament from different sides, and that's when we come together, put our minds together, and push this country forward. And then call out mediocrity when we see it, which is what we are calling out today.
All right. Sylvia, before we take a look quickly, because I'm saying we have about 10 minutes to go, before we look at the by-elections that transpired, Vivian, I'll come back with that. But Sylvia, what do you say to the responses from Florence and Vivian, as well as Judy? And they say when you occupy certain offices, then even the nature of your speech needs to change. They say the DP is the one provoking his critics.
I think, every individual has a window of opportunity to perhaps misspeak or make mistakes, but let's watch the space. I think that has been muted now, it's been controlled. And let's watch the developments within the next couple of weeks, and I think we'll see a lot of change because now people have a lot of work to get done. Everybody's gone back to office with a lot to do. The president is a worker, he's a deliverer, and everybody is now shying away in appearing in places when your desk is full of paperwork. So let people get into work. They have now settled in properly after the Nanyuki event, or rather retreat, and they're focused. So I know we have as a society, as a country, we have seen a lot of this play out in the public, and I think now, from where I sit, this has been muted. And I think going forward, we are going to see more of service delivery, more of responses to the anguish of the Kenyans, and more on, Kenya going forward. Even when we talk about Governor Sakaja and the wars and all that, you know, I was impressed to see the first BRT bus is already out. And so, you know, these are the things that we should be looking forward to with excitement, especially us Nairobians, me being one of them, to see Nairobi clean up, to see Nairobi become a status of a world capital and not just an East African capital. We are a world capital, but, you know, the Nairobi doesn't look Nairobi because it has been dirty, lots of services not being delivered efficiently. But, you know, he's at work. So let people settle into office. Let's give them another 6 months. Let's do a review within 6 months. And I think we'll see a lot of difference as we focus more on where, you know, Kenya is going. There's the hunger, there's the inflation, and then there is, you know, the desperation of the CBC system, which is now trying to settle in. Parents are anxious about their young ones who are joining junior high school. These are critical. It's a critical moment in Kenya right now, and we can't be in a better place. Of course, economically, we need to be better, but if we work these steps as a country, we follow them through, surely within the next 2 years, we will start to see a lot of difference in the country and a lot of improvement in our own individual lives as Kenyans.
Okay. All right, Vivian, as a governance and political analyst, when we had the by-elections in Kandara, we saw the woman rep take on Alice Wahome, the water CS, who was being replaced after being appointed to cabinet, and she accused Alice Wahome of decampaigning the UDA candidate because he stood against her in August last year. Yeah. When we went to Garissa Township, we saw UDM's party leader Ali Roba accuse Aden Duale of influencing the withdrawal of his security to intimidate him or his party, UDM, to backing the UDA candidate. Minel Germara complaints over the UDA nomination process. But if we look at Garissa and Kandara, as some people, actually, let's just look at more specifically the Garissa situation. You know, in a house, because now we're using that analogy a lot. In a house, maybe the older son in this house is UDA, because UDA was the original founder member, right? In your analysis, how do you see this playing out moving forward? Because some joined the party a bit later than others. Do you think some people have every right or more right to be more dominant than others?
I think in that scenario, equality is overrated. You know, the truth is Ali Roba and his team came in very late. It was after we'd even voted, I think, that he jumped ship. So it's very difficult to expect that someone like Aden Duale, CS Aden Duale, who's been, you know, with the president, you know, from the get-go, and suffered several consequences for his support, you know, would relinquish some space, some power, some influence to accommodate, you know, Ali Roba and his team. So this is just political power play. This is just, it's common, you know, like I said, among the political class, people trying to, you know, muscle in, weigh their strength. It's about influence, and it's about power, and it's about space and positions. So it's not uncommon. I'm not surprised that this is happening. But I just want to go back. There's something I had wanted to mention before we talked about the by-elections, about the economy. You see, the truth is, regionally, we seem to be losing a lot to Rwanda. Even when you look at like Nairobi right now, we are there's chaos around. Oh, don't remove matatus from the CBD, etc. But Rwanda is quickly, you know, shaping up, making themselves a conducive alternative to Nairobi. And if we don't do anything about it, progressively we will lose out. Okay. I've seen a lot of pictures shared even on social media, you know, comparing the two. And of course we are still kind of ahead, but if we continue retrogressing and they continue progressing, eventually we will lose a lot of business. I think like even conferencing businesses in Nairobi, a lot of hotels and venues have lost business because of just how Rwanda has positioned themselves. So it's about time, politics aside, to look at the economic, benefits and economic factors about how these policies affect our economy. Because at the end of the day, the leaders we put there are for our well-being collectively as Kenyans. And just going back to manufacturing, manufacturing is one of the ways governments can, lift up the economy. But in Kenya, our electricity prices have more like doubled. So what are we saying? The policies need to be cohesive. They need to work towards a goal. If we are saying our goal is to improve the economy and we are relying on manufacturing, that needs to be seen in the policies we put in place and the actions we do. Let's not say we want to build the economy, lakini tunaongeza bei ya stima. How will the people, cost of production will definitely go up. If it goes up, how will you compete with cheaper imports from the rest of Africa and the Middle East and, China? It doesn't make sense. So there needs to be a way that the government comes together and works, cohesively to deliver. Tuweke hizo power play aside, sijui difference between women rep Betty Maina and CS Alice Wahome. Hazitusaidi. It does not help us as Kenyans. What we want is a better economy, a better environment, better healthcare, better education, better incomes. When we start seeing that, no one will have a problem supporting President Ruto. What we don't want is a hot air. Hot air kwa kesi yetu ya Azimio. We don't want hot air in this scenario.
Okay.
Yeah, we want delivery.
Right. All right. Yeah. So I'll allow Judy and Florence as well to have their last words. She says, "Get your house in order." She's like, I'm really not concerned how you go about it, but get your house in order.
And I like what you said. We were tired, hot air. It's time to get your act right. We know for some of us, we remit a lot of billions of dollars, and now it's good because when we send a dollar, it's what, 121 or 124, depending on the bank that you go to withdraw your money. It's time. We are tired. It's not just politics, business as usual. No, we are tired. We are sending money. Give us something that works. Some of us have businesses we do in Kenya. Some of us have families that are doing business in Kenya. Normally when I come to Kenya, people support me because I don't have a church supporting me in Kenya or in America. So when I come, I'm using a lot of my money. This year was ngumu. Even asking Andururu from someone, it was hard. After even you guys, people are saying, Judy, hakuna pesa. Since elections, hakuna pesa. That is a big shame. I mean, you promise us these things, but people don't have jobs. Hakuna makazi, hakuna nini nini. That Hustler Fund, I agree. Hustler Fund, maybe it's a gimmick, a marketing gimmick. Give people more money. Let the government say, hey, you want to do business for a year? Let's lower the taxes. Let people do business. There are many youth who don't have things. Please come on, support people.
All right.
Thank you.
Your last word, Florence. I see Jennifer Karina, if I'm not mistaken, in the wings. Florence?
Yes. I think my last word goes around the conversation we had. When the house is in order, things like the ones we've shared around intimate partner violence, things like what we are seeing, botched circumcision for boys. I think whoever is responsible, I think whether it's security or what, needs to check the issue of those camps that are put in place for circumcision in the name of culture, that actually they are following the law. If they're not following the law, something needs to happen. So since Sylvia told us everybody now has gone back to work, whoever the CS is in terms of security needs to check. Chiefs need to be mandated to check what is going on there, because we are losing our boys. Some are being sodomized, some are being violated sexually in some of those camps, and that needs to be checked. Next, if the government is going to work, I know my sisters have talked about the economy. When the economy is not doing well, you will start seeing a rise and a spike in violations. And so if the economy is doing well, we are safe as women within in the domestic setup. You remember during COVID-19, when we were confined, when people were losing jobs, what happened? Domestic violence sparked, defilement sparked, sexual violence went up. So we want the economy to work so that our children are safe, so that we are safe.
All right,
yeah, that's my parting shot.
All right, fantastic. Really, it's a good point at which to end things. Sylvia, I'm so sorry. I have to end the conversation there, but I just want to say thank you for taking the time. It should be about, the UK is what, 2 hours behind us? 3 hours?
3 hours behind.
Yeah, so thank you for getting up so early in the morning to speak to us. Thank you very much, Florence Machio, Judy Oyuyo, as well as Vivian Ta. Have a good day. See you tomorrow.